Now, it's come to my attention that there's this thing called critical race theory, and there's also these things called protests and struggle sessions. And to me, they're quite intrinsically related. Once you start dividing people based on their race, assigning everybody privilege points, and then attempting to right that imbalance of power or authority or resources, it leads to the erosion of responsibility, of self-consciousness, of self-awareness, of decency, of civility.
You have white privilege, and it's not here. It's over with. It's 2020.
Yes, it is.
Wake up. You got a mask on.
Yes, I do.
So you're under the government, too. You're confined, and you don't have white privilege anymore. I'm a queen. California. She was from a black queen.
Okay, well, I need
you don't talk because you so privileged that you got to get in somebody else and tell them you're not listening. I don't have to listen to you.
Then go to the bathroom.
You don't run me. You go to the bathroom. You shut up and stay in your lane. Bow down, bitch, because your eyes is recessive. I got the dominant gene. I took all. I got A+ and all of it. Okay, Mom. That's right.
However, it's not just enough to go around and pick out examples and say, that's critical race theory, that's critical race theory, that's critical race theory. It's like somebody going around and saying, that storm is climate change, or that fire is climate change.
If we have 4 more years of Trump's climate denial, how many suburbs will be burned in wildfires? How many suburban neighborhoods will have been flooded out? How many suburbs will have been blown away in superstorms?
People are very easy to discount your interpretation of these events that don't explicitly call themselves climate change or critical race theory. So part of my work is to try to solidify my understanding of why critical race theory is incredibly toxic to organizations and to individuals. And so this episode is another submission for your viewing pleasure, well, actually probably displeasure, about the ways in which this theory manifests in the behavior, the actions, and the words of others. So we're going to start off with this Twitter thread. You guys are going to love this one, by FJ3Ugly. It goes, begging white people to support BLM and related work has diluted the integrity of true revolutionary work. I still don't get why folks were so focused on getting mainstream support when it only means the inevitable destruction of the movement. White people, no matter how liberal or progressive, will never endorse revolutionary acts that may jeopardize their children's lives. That's quite biblical. She's basically like taking the role of Yahweh here and saying, you know, if you really want racial justice, why don't you put your kid on the stone and lift that knife, or let me help you do it. To continue, as such, they will never fully support a black liberation revolution by way of violent rebellion. Nope, nah, not gonna happen, LOL. Violence is the only way, of course. No votes, no marching, no spots on cable news, no high-fashion magazine cover stories, no hashtags, no panels. None of that is going to bring about the liberation black folks deserve. But folks only understand violence in its Eurocentric framing and definition, same as liberation, if we are being honest. So she wants to shift the understanding of what violence is and maybe make it not so violent. So you hear violence, and you already have a picture of what it looks like, and you've been conditioned to reject it out of fear. What if I told you the violence required is liberating? What if I told you that there is no way for a dislocated, displaced African to truly live free without the complete destruction of whiteness's occupation of space in our minds, bodies, souls, communities, etc. Whiteness will never fully translate a revolutionary message, so we don't need any more magazine spreads, even if the photogs and writers are black. Whiteness will never nourish us to completion. That's an interesting image comes to mind. So we don't need any more high-cost galas or dinners or anything involving eating their food to push for liberation and freedom. Whiteness will always seek absolution in progressive spaces, so it will portray us as both black Madonnas and mammies. Don't be tricked by the false adoration, though. Those are subservient roles, now empowering. Even anti-racism centers whiteness in its work and hasn't divested of the belief that whiteness rules everything. Y'all notice how popular anti-racism is now? How many white people are talking about consuming it? LOL. Of course they do. It centers them in the work. They don't feel like outsiders or marginalized people waiting for an invitation to the conversation. They are the topic. Pro-black is too scary and always has been. BLM is a pro-black stance. The words aren't hard for folks to paint on streets and hang in their windows. They can't even truly act on it, though, because it centers black people. They need something to make them feel included and centered in this work, even if the goal is to strip them of their power. They want to make sure they're centered all the way up until that point. LOL. There's a lot of bling bling in the anti-racism space these days, so look, go get that coin. You gotta rebrand and sprinkle the phrase across your website. Please do. Take every dime they're offering, reparations and such. Just make sure you're not letting any of these Eurocentric notions of freedom fighting and liberation actually influence your ways of thinking. White people will never prioritize black liberation over white lives. Smiley face. So that's an interesting mix of bluster and rhetoric. And of course, Twitter doesn't take that one down because this is obviously not a call to violence. No, a call to violence would have to be a European form of violence to actually, get in trouble with the censors over there. But underneath that logic is the case for reparations, the case for revolution, the case for the utter destruction of what this thing called whiteness is. I don't think that that is actually a plausible goal because whiteness just means everything that's standard. You just call something whiteness and say that you don't want to operate with that or you want to disrupt and dismantle that. And then you go after it and you strip it from your language, your thoughts, your minds, everything. Trying to fight something that's so omnipresent is actually impossible. And it drives you kind of crazy. It drives the movement crazy. But in the meantime, a bunch of sociopathic narcissists get their way for a little bit before the entire ship sinks. This woman here is going after the liberals and the progressives. The phrase is, the liberals get the bullet too. They despise more than the open racists, more than the Trump voter, the white liberals that are calling the Trump voters Nazis, because the white people on their side still exist and they want them gone. These people will destroy the closest first. The best idea is probably to get as far away from them as possible. Now, this is some very revolutionary rhetoric, very inciting and, very easy to react to. I want to show you what happens in a more quote-unquote civil discourse where the actual white progressives submit themselves to a struggle session. Watch how you're reacting. Watch what is going on inside of you, feeling through these things that are happening. I would pre-interpret that this is a lot of emotional kind of stuff, a lot of empathetic stuff. This happened in a Jungian deep psychology seminar, but it really does show that the more and more compassionate you are toward this critical race theory discourse, the more it will attack you. And the deeper the thorns and the fangs will sink into you. So here's about 10 minutes of fully matured cringe.
So what we've done usually with these community conversations over the years is to try to focus on issues from the perspective of depth psychology. And as we know from the work of Carl Jung, we humans have a tendency to bifurcate into opposites and opposing positions that are opposite to each other and often are self-defeating. So on the other hand, even though we don't want to get polarized into opposites, sometimes it's clear that you do have to take a very specific position. I live in the state of South Carolina, and there's a politician and attorney here in South Carolina named Bakari Sellers, who recently said that today we're really left with only two choices. You're either a racist or you're an anti-racist. There's really no room. It's reached this, it's been at a crisis point for a long time, but now it's entered enough into the public consciousness that we really need to be active in whatever ways we can. And so we want to explore how we can do that to date?
I teach the restorative justice and peace building, reconciliation, and courses around reparations. When Mike Brown was killed, I was a faculty member at Bucknell on the East Coast, and I was talking to a friend from St. Louis, and I was telling him about a course I just taught where we were, looking at the Israeli occupation of Palestine and that colonization that's happening there. He told me, we have our own Gaza here in St. Louis. We ended up creating a quasi-truth commission. We called it the Truth Initiative, where Black folk in St. Louis and people who had experienced police violence could share their stories and be validated in a way that the broader society, maybe now is happening, but up to that point was denying what had happened, even in the face of videos, horrific, violent videos. People would tell their stories, and I would notice that, white folk would come and cry or ask me, questions that I felt was in part about feeling better about themselves, because I had, I come to see police violence as this manifestation of the wishes of white America. So when people call the police for Black folks just barbecuing in the park, it's just the emergence or reemergence of the complex, I believe, that Dr. Brewster is talking about, that's always present, even in people who, are considered good liberal folk who voted for Obama. I just really began believing that we need reparations, that repair is necessary. And so it's not just about you not showing microaggressions or you hiring more Black people in your institution. It is completely about uncovering and reflecting on our daily practices and ways in which we are bound up and complicit in injustice that happens against our planet, indigenous people, Black folks, Latinx folks, every single day. And so at every way, and even myself, we find ourselves complicit in violence and moral monsters without thinking.
When I hear that, we have police because white people want them, it feels so divisive. I know I'm an ignorant white woman. I know that I have so much to learn, and I know that none of us can be fully unembedded from the culture that we have been raised in. But I think for those of us who have some deep morality and humanity, that these are powerful issues. And to just say white people, it's so othering. And I wonder, is there any way that you can accept that perhaps you have allies who have white skin and include us in the way that you speak about these issues so that we can join with you rather than being thrown out? I guess my question is, how do you think as Jungians we can start to engage this more directly, more constructively? And also, is there a way that you can include white people as part of the solution? I'm totally behind truth and reconciliation. I'm behind defunding police. I'm behind reparations. And I have been for, almost 4 decades. So my heart just breaks when I hear these white people terminologies. It hurts.
I'm going to let another white person answer. I think that, I'm sorry, your heart breaks.
I have a question. I'm not white. I'm a Black man, but I'm wondering, why are you not practicing what you preach and tell others? Why aren't you willing to sit in your discomfort?
Well,
do we have to now placate you so that you don't feel bad, so that then you can you don't feel like you can do something?
No, it's not about that. I'm saying, can you accept that perhaps you have allies that have white skin?
Can you accept that you are a racist and that you need to begin to practice anti-racist ways? Why do we have to accept and make something comfortable for you?
I'm not asking you to make it comfortable to me.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Wait, Kevin, I'm not. And I can tell you, when I was 14 years old, and I said to my white sister, I'm not prejudiced. And she said, of course you're prejudiced. You're a middle-class white girl. I've been struggling with this since then. And I want to learn, and I take it up actively. But I do want to have a way to enter the conversation as a human being.
Well, see, that's the problem, right? That's the problem right there. Let me say that I don't believe in white allyship because nothing is required of allyship. I believe in white advocacy because advocacy requires you to put something on the line, right? And what I'm hearing from you, maybe it's not your intention, but what I'm hearing from you is that you have to feel comfortable and you don't like the fact that we may use language that makes you feel uncomfortable and therefore you feel put out and then don't want to advocate or do any work.
No, I don't, it's not true for me. And if you could just hear me out. What I'm saying is that, oh gosh, it's so upsetting that it's really hard to find the right words. And I know that I'm ignorant. I know I will use wrong words.
You're also hijacking.
What's that?
I just said you're also hijacking.
Oh dear.
We as white people, we need to take a look at our shadow and often perpetration. And I think we need to engage with our unconscious, and I feel we need to unravel that layer by layer. I really like the way you put that, Dr. Ragland. Every day we are complicit, and I noticed that myself. I mean, I consider myself a liberal, but I have had many instances where I saw, yes, there's the white shadow, you know, it crops up. And I think, as you were saying, we need to do the inner work. You know, we can't allow African Americans to do the inner work for us. I think we really need to go inside and face that shadow.
I just want to briefly add, I totally agree with that this, for the very first time, is an opportunity for white people to have to look at ourselves in the way we have identified color in everybody who's not white. Like, this is the first time that I have to wake up and recognize myself as a racist, as someone who desires to learn enough to engage in anti-racism in an active way. And if the term white people hurts, then welcome to the non-white club. I'm sorry, because that is fragility, and that requires a mirror and to go in. I like the term you use, white shadow. Go into the white shadow.
Truth is not about division. Speaking what your experience is not about creating division. It's about being seen. It's about me listening and seeing you, David, seeing you, Fanny, seeing Kevin, seeing what I have not been able to see before. And that, to me, hearing that truth is an important part of beginning to somehow offer reparation.
For most of my life, I thought I was not racist, and I did a lot of racial justice work. But things happened, and I decided I had to go into my personal family history back many generations, which many people don't feel they have to do. And I'm not advising it for everyone, but I discovered up until that time, I really had trouble talking to people that were blatantly racist. I had trouble talking with a lot of white people. I thought I was better than all of them. And suddenly, once I got through all this, and it took me decades to do it, now I can talk to people like that because I faced those people that were still in me that I thought I had left behind. And so I get a lot of people who come up to me after I talk about my book and say, oh, I feel so bad for you. I'm so glad I didn't have parents like that, or I'm so glad I didn't have grandparents that lynched people. And I say to them, you can't be sure. You never know. And none of us can be sure. Those of us who never lived in the South don't know that they had grandparents and great-grandparents that ran away from all that. A lot of this stuff has been hidden. And so my sense, what I say to other white people is, especially if you're trying to individuate, I don't know how anyone can individuate without going into their racial, multi-generational family history, including Jungian analysts. And I really doubt that many Jungian analysts have done this kind of work. So that's my 2 bits for today.
So I probably should have said this before I played the footage, but I think it's important to be inoculated to these struggle sessions so you can kind of identify when they occur. And with this piece of footage, I thought it was interesting because everybody is pretty intelligent. They are not at all slow-witted, give or take, but they are very slow-mannered. It's all in the kind of format of a psychologist session where you really slowly unveil things. And what happened was that this woman listened to these presentations and then she made one criticism about why do you have to use such divisive language? And immediately she was pushed back on. There's no room for disagreement in this ideology. There's no room for questions. You are either going along with the work or you are complicit, and any drag, any criticism, any critique is slowing down and therefore not in accordance with the anti-racist work. And that was the other interesting thing, or the most interesting thing that I saw in that footage, was that the announcer, the host, says that Jung suggests we never go into a bipolar kind of situation where we say us versus them, or we distill things into a binary. We should never do that. But sometimes you have to do that, and now is the time to do that. Either you're racist or you're anti-racist, which again, it takes the brakes off of any social movement. There's no allowance for you to disagree. You have to be on board because now is the time. The time for what? For reparations, but not just reparations, not just money and positions of power, but to be in a constant state of going through your person, going through your inventory and seeing where all your bigotries lie. And if you don't find them, it's because they're hidden from you. So you need to go all the way back into your history because there is something wrong with you. We know this much is true. There is something wrong with you. And you need to be aware of that and then go through some sort of process of not necessarily reconciliation, but knowing better, entering the woke mindset and basically becoming a part of the Borg. So I wanted to show that. I know it's a little slower and boring than other kinds of footage, but I think it's still important to understand that this ideology, this wokeness, can translate into any given social situation. As long as people say that this is what we have to do, then it'll just manifest wherever you are, in a psychologist group or on a college campus or a student on the streets, wherever you are, this stuff will manifest. It's very clever and very viral. And so I think we need to be inoculated to it. So that's what I have for you today. I hope you guys are staying cool, calm, and collected. And instead of Bijou, I want to show you some aerial footage of what it's like in the Olympia area right now due to all the smoke and fires. So I'll talk to you all soon. Good day.